Richard Wasylynchuk is a Marketo champion alumni and part of this year's Fearless 50, and we're happy to have him on the show today. Hi, Richard.
Hi, John. Happy to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. We like to highlight our data heroes and highlight their stories on how they got to be where they're at today. And it's typically was never a planned journey on the marketing ops road. But if you could just give us a little background on your journey to becoming a Marketo champion, a Fearless 50 alum, and we're introducing you as a data hero.
Sure. It's funny that you say it's never a planned career path because it was not for me. I think back in my school days, I thought I was going to be an architect, and did an undergrad in fine arts. So over the years, I've really had a balance in my life on creativity and then analytics and numbers. Really enjoyed math. And I think where I first got into some of the data and analysis is when I got out of school and spent a lot of time in online marketing, probably well over 10 years ago. And that was, the combination of really the marketing programs, but then also, the coding, the technology, the data. And I responded really well to it, and I really enjoy that work. And I think just following that passion over the years, I've picked up opportunities that have gotten me into more of that data focus and the analysis focus as that function has emerged in marketing. So it's been an interesting journey.
Can you tell us a little bit about your journey to becoming a Marketo champion? There's only so many of you out there.
Yeah, and I started using Marketo in the early days. I remember some of the vendors that were out there who are no longer out there, but I think I've been a Marketo user for, if not more than 10 years, right around that 10-year mark. And I think really it's as you get into that the champion sort of activities and you're really understanding the value of Marketo, I think it really comes to terms with the realization around the operational efficiency that you can obtain using a platform like Marketo. So how do you use the tool to not only manage your data, but also manage your teams and help them move faster and then understand what's going on with their data faster. So if you can get more of those rapid insights happening through your program reporting, but then just also production time and time to market with Marketo, it becomes a really critical tool for a lot of marketing teams. So for me, I saw the value very early, and there's a robustness to it. So trying to get and help other people understand and unlock the true value of Marketo. There's a lot of, I think there's a lot to be said around the maturity of people's use of Marketo. I think I've seen some smaller companies that get caught in using it just as an email marketing tool, where there is, lots of robust features that can help a business move faster and grow.
So being as you are one of the top Marketo users, where do you go to get help, right? Are there Slack communities? Or where's the secret diamonds in the rough where you go to get help and communicate?
Yeah, it is. Where you're going to find the most valuable help is a lot in the peer-to-peer networks. And I go back to the first time I ever went to a Marketo summit, and when marketing operations was emerging as a function, there weren't a lot of companies that had teams. So you might be the only marketing operations resource at a particular company. and so oftentimes you feel very alone, and you're with people who don't really think the way you think. So I remember when I went down to my first summit and started networking, I was like, oh my God, all these people think the same way that I think, or experiencing some of the same challenges. So really interesting to connect and have those conversations. And that has led to, a network of people who, there's some LinkedIn groups. I run the user group in our city, so we try and facilitate conversations and help everybody with learning and how to get more out of the platform. So there is, there is sort of the personal networking, the one-to-one, but then there's a lot of user groups. There's a lot of online communities that you can tap into. The Marketo community itself is fairly good for, understanding and getting help. And everybody on that community is super active. So there's lots of help and support from the community out there for sure.
Yeah, I've found a few Slack groups that I really like. Mops Ops, Wizard of Ops. Like, there's all these cool little places to go and get a lot of help from the users. But want to know a little bit more about you and how you sit in the marketing operations position. I mean, are you more demand focused, demand gen, or do you focus on like life cycle management marketing or product marketing? What's your specialty when it comes to administering a system?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it is different at every organization. So, just touching on that point where, marketing operations hasn't been around for that long. So I think every organization has structured those teams in a different way. I've been fortunate enough at the company that I'm at to have had the opportunity to build an actual ops team focused on operations. So, if we think of our mandate, we're really looking at growing, our technology, our MarTech stack to support the business, but then doing a lot of analysis and providing insight on what's going on from a demand gen perspective. We aren't so much involved in demand programs per se. We do handle some of the production and the operations and the infrastructure to support that. Where I think we are, this is an interesting point, where I think that we do have a little bit more ownership as far as demand goes is understanding that full end-to-end life cycle, and how we can develop the technology and the infrastructure so that we are doing things that are innovative and that are really going to drive growth for the business. So, I find that, if you're looking for talent in the market and you're looking for somebody who is really good at demand gen and building programs to create demand, they may not be the people who have the breadth of knowledge in terms of the technology and the operational infrastructure needed to execute. So I think that's where we kind of have a little bit of that overlap with some of the demand teams that we work with.
Great. Currently, as a marketing operations team, what are your top focuses right now?
Well, my career has focused on high growth tech companies, and the focus is more faster. So I think from a marketing operations perspective, what we're really trying to focus in and hone in on is understanding our data better. So we've done a lot of work in the past year building out our attribution modeling, building some predictive and using AI to help some of our targeting. So we've done a lot of work in the past to get more valuable insights out of our data. And I think right now what we're trying to do is figure out better ways to enable the team, not just inside of marketing, but the rest of the organization to understand what some of those insights mean, and how that will help grow the business.
So, a lot of studies center around data being this huge asset or liability, or, it's a big project. But they all point to no department wanting to own the data. And like nobody wants the responsibility, but the jobs are out there. The jobs are big jobs, and like great
Yeah.
quality of life. If you get really good at this, you could have a growth within your career. So do you feel like marketing ops is positioned well as the creator of most data to kind of be the owner, or the manager of the life cycle of the profile of a person in a business?
Yes. I think, that's a really interesting point, because I think it kind of dovetails into a conversation around revenue ops and how that's starting to become an emerging field as well. And I think, that's some of the things that, in terms of my own career growth, looking at what that looks like from a transitioning from a marketing operations team into a revenue operations team. I think why marketing is well suited to take the lead on that data perspective is that marketing data is ugly. You are talking about trying to understand multi-channel activity across accounts with multiple contacts. There is a lot of data that you have to process and that you have to understand. I would say more so than, maybe not more so in terms of the volume of data, but the complexity, I think, at the marketing level is probably the highest, in my opinion. So I think from a data governance perspective and a process governance perspective, I think marketing operations is well positioned to take the lead, to move into that as organizations start to grow and think through, consolidating some of those operational functions in a RevOps group.
That's wonderful. Are you guys internally doing any ABM facilitation for your
Yes.
your team? Can you tell me a little
Yes.
bit about it?
That's it's if I think of sort of, the themes of marketing, a couple of years ago, it was really focused on attribution and trying to crack that nut. I think really, especially in light of what's going on with COVID, people have had to make adjustments and really understand how to, again, go back to the roots of making sure that you're talking to the right people at the right time with the right message. And that really is, that foundation of ABM and focusing on the accounts that really are going to drive revenue fast for your organization. So we are most definitely in the process, and have been running with some ABM initiatives to make sure that we're targeting the right people and putting the right effort on the right accounts.
So tell me how your team manages or what is the importance of data within supporting an ABM program?
I mean, the data is the foundation, right? So ABM really starts with the targeting and understanding what your ICP is. So we have done a lot of work internally. And if you think of sort of that maturity curve of how you're defining your ICP, you may start just by saying, well, we want to look at a specific industry. Then you progress to trying to do lookalike analysis in your database, then you move into trying to develop your own model. We've kind of run through the whole process and have reached that final peak in maturity where we've started working with a vendor to develop predictive models and use some AI to really kind of look at a very large amount of data that we don't have access to, but the vendor does, to help enhance how we understand that ICP. And then we've used that to score propensity against the rest of the database. So for us, like, that was a critical piece in understanding what accounts are going to be most apt to buy and where we want to focus our ABM efforts. The one thing I would say though is working with a vendor, you also still have to infuse your own learnings into that model. So from an ABM approach, what we did is we did that model for our ICP definition. We used the propensity to score all of our accounts, but then internally we had discussions around what's the segment of those A accounts that really we want to focus in on. So looking at our historic data to understand, like what industries have we performed better in, where are the higher deal sizes, where are they moving faster traditionally, and then focusing in on those A accounts in those pockets to make sure that we're driving business fast.
That's awesome. It's some companies haven't gotten to the predictive because they have to put some legwork in at the beginning. So
Yeah.
you're like either putting the legwork in and acquiring the data and analyzing it, or you've already done that and now you're ready to predict outcomes, and it sounds like you guys are ahead of the game there. Once you know your target accounts, now I got a couple questions, like how targeted is it? How many per rep or per marketing department? How many can you actually target on a one-to-one basis?
Yeah.
And then what channels or cadence do you utilize to actually get that to engage them?
Yeah, no, those are great questions. So, I think that, when you're looking at the one-to-one, one-to-few, and one-to-many, it really is, you're looking at it against capacity issues with your sales team. So for us, we kind of came up with a strategy where we defined what the number was, sort of at a max capacity that we would want sales to be focusing on. I would say that the one thing to note when you start doing ABM, and in my opinion, when you're doing it right, you're not going to see equality in terms of the number of accounts per rep. So when we did this analysis, there's certain territories that are much higher in terms of the A's that we want to focus on than others, which can lead into another conversation around territory alignment and coverage. I'll park that one over there. But in terms of how we sort of structured the way that we are developing our ABM program is looking at smaller plays with specific objectives. So for example, one of the plays that we start with is what we call an account readiness play. So a BDR will pick up an account that we flagged, they'll look at it, they'll do some research, they'll make sure that the personas are on the account. If they're not, they'll go to a data source and load them in so that we have the right people to talk to. They'll do some research, they'll see if we've engaged in the past, and then they move on to the next play. One of the things that we've also done from the marketing side is that we want to make sure that we're facilitating that move through the funnel for an account. So we're trying to essentially get a flywheel of accounts that are coming into the BDR team as they bubble up and engage. So we've got programs that look to nurture accounts that may not be in that segment yet to see if we can engage them, that would then pull them through.
So basically, if you get an account in your target engaged, you hand it to sales for follow-up, and then you drop new accounts that aren't at that engagement score into your funnel to warm up so that sales can pick up.
Yeah.
Okay. And on those target accounts, do you also get involved in like mid-funnel, late-stage funnel, any sort of automation or assistance?
Yes, that is something that we are planning for. We haven't quite gotten there yet, but certainly our philosophy is ABM is all in. So it's not just from a marketing perspective trying to engage the accounts to hand off to sales. It's really engaging the accounts to get them to a BDR, but then also we've got we've got some activation plays that are focused around digital ads and making sure that we have that surround voice as a BDR is working it, but then also as they go into the funnel, what are the programs that we can build that will help drive the velocity and remove any friction points in the funnel?
So one of the biggest kind of frictions of implementing ABM that I've found is, first off, scoring your data. That's a whole, that can take you a year to do, right? Or more. But then once you start outbounding and doing marketing activities, you drive a lot of inbound traffic through your channels, and typically that data gets created in the marketing system. And believe it or not, I know I've talked to you. You have a solution to link leads to accounts. Sounds like you have some level of sophistication around that. But for the 80 or 90% of the users in Marketo that don't link leads to accounts, can you tell us like how important or why it's important to be able to link or convert a new person in your marketing channels to an account in your Salesforce?
It's critical, right? I try to block out the days before we were doing lead to account matching, because you really where you'll struggle is to understand what's going on at the top of the funnel in terms of activity and how that's linking to what's going on the account side. Once you connect that, you start to get a real understanding of really the true journey from tip to tail, so to speak. But you'll see what's going on with your leads and the marketing that might be earlier in sort of that person marketing funnel. And you'll be able to map some of that activity to your accounts to get that holistic understanding. So you may have, you may look at your account and the contacts on it and see some of the things that are happening there, but not realize that, you have some really juicy personas that are stuck in your lead object in Salesforce that you want to bring over. So there you can have some gaps in the insights that you're going to be able to pull if you aren't able to match those.
Yeah, I always use the example, a lot of us SaaS companies deal with investors, and we love to go to trade shows and spend a lot of money on events before all of this happened. And they would always say, I don't see any close one business from this trade show, and we would look at the list and be like, well, time out, there's 50 companies on that list that are either customers or now are customers. And apparently they must have sent their analyst or somebody to our website after they came to the show, and you attributed the first touch to that account based on the web form submission that the sales rep got and manually converted, and now that's the source of attribution. So, first of all, to me, if you can't link people in your database to accounts in your database, you can't associate all historical campaign attribution of people to your close one opportunities and accounts. So it makes it harder to create that visual representation of all the personas that are actually engaging throughout that, top of funnel journey. And so I think it's a critical process, and not necessarily mapping the company ICP, but the persona, ideal person profile at these accounts, and when you should engage them with what content. But when you get it dialed in and you start getting auto lead to account linking, it definitely helps with handing relationships off to the owner of that relationship when they're hot and engaged and ready for a conversation. So
yeah, there's one point you bring up there that I wanted to touch on, because it's an interesting one. We had we had that similar angst around events as well, because we pre-COVID events was a really healthy channel for us from a pipeline and opportunity engagement standpoint. When we went through, and again, it was always, the pipeline came from that event, but then you'd look in your CRM, you really wouldn't understand what's going on. So when we did and we had a similar situation where the data would get into the system before potentially marketing's processing the data to link it to the event. So you would say either there was a manual entry from a salesperson, or they hit the website converted before that data gets tagged to the event. So you would have that gap in attribution to say, well, it came from the website, it didn't come from the event. But we went, we're on Visible, and we went and did some really good work in terms of the infrastructure and the business rules to support some time delays, to say that, if there was, event that happened today, that we would kind of push back the date of a milestone to be included in that, so that you would really kind of correct for some of those issues that we're having with time delay of loads for some of those events.
That is really cool. I love that idea. So, you're at an event, you delay your analytics on certain channels while you're at the event to make sure that that event gets attributed to whatever it was, a web form. That's really cool. Let's switch gears a little bit in terms of, again, back to, you're going to get your target account, you're going to target them with multi-channels, and a lot of the times they come back to your web forms. So, can you tell me what you guys came to the final decision on how many fields are on my form? And...
yeah, I'm laughing because it's something that we're always watching. We've had smart form technology to reduce the amount of fields. We've used predictive profiling. We've used visibility rules and Marketo to ask different questions as people keep coming back to get more information. We've exposed all the fields. We kind of go back and forth, depending, I think, on the programs, on where the form might be showing up. If it's just a regular web page versus something that we're pushing money towards through digital ads, or an event sign up. So it really, I kind of giggled there, because it really isn't a one size fits all answer. It really depends on the functionality that you're using. We also do have, so we have the technology to be able to reduce the fields, but we also use data enrichment partners. So that also has freed up the ability for us to have those conversations and to do some testing to understand, do we need 2 fields? Do we need 8? Do we need 4? And know that we have the security that when somebody converts, that we do have a data partner that's going to enrich some of those fields that we may not be asking for. For us, we have some critical pieces of data that we need to route leads properly, mostly firmographic information. So, 7, 8 years ago, when we didn't have those tools in place, we're finding that, a good 30-40% of people are lying on the form, right? Or, in terms of what's going on in their organization. So it caused a lot of drag on the BDR team when they would get the data, and then they'd have to go and they'd basically be cleaning things. So with the smart form technology and some of the things that we're doing with our data enrichment partners, we've been able to get, more accurate lead routing. We get them the information faster that they need to process and work the data. But in terms of forms, it's always a conversation. It's always something that we're looking at from a data perspective to understand how to optimize those experiences.
Yeah, so I've got a brother in commercial real estate, and he sometimes calls me a widget salesman, and and we talk about this for him because we study direct marketing and all the sign up to all the courses, and at the end of the day, your forms should be driven. The number of the information you request should be based on the value you're going to provide back to that customer. So there are certain channels and certain forms that you're going to ask for more information. I don't ever want spam to come through. I want I'm going to give out an enterprise free trial or something, you know. But if you're Slack and all you need is an email, like, so be it. Let them do an email and send it off to a social provider and map up a personal ID and stuff, right? But yeah, I'm like, value for value. If it's just a webinar or something, you know, gate it with an email. If it's something more substantial, put more form fields on it. But typically those aren't, like you said, any more demographics about a business. You can get those from a vendor. It's more specific to whatever your funnel or conversion requires. So.
Yeah, I think that's also a good point, right? You know, I've been at organizations where the way that we've approached it is, you know, using some of your cookie technology to say, if you fill out a form for a webinar, we're actually going to unlock all. So you'll bypass the form for the next 30 days on all the assets. So that, I think that helps. But I think, you know, that's an important point too, is everybody's data has value. So if you're asking them to give something up, then you better be giving them the value if you're asking for that. And the other point I wanted to touch on is because it's important. Like, I think a lot of people forget about the pull through. So it's, oh, I post an asset, I put a form in front of it, I get the data, full stop. So it is, and it kind of dovetails with that ABM motion of, if you got all these different plays, so what is the next play? So if you're getting somebody that comes in, that converts on the form, are you sending a follow-up email that's triggered off that conversion? And then are you then passing it right away to the BDRs, or then are you sending it to the ad bridge in Marketo to make sure that now they're seeing some ads for different content? Or, you know, like, really, how are people threading through to make sure that if you're asking for data, you're providing that valuable experience for people, and you're helping really establish that engagement and that relationship with them.
Yeah, that's great insight. I'm gonna switch gears again on you, and kind of talk about the whole territory alignment, aligning that with your ABM, and then how you actually do a routing. But can you tell me a little bit about how you guys align territories with whatever your ABM strategy is?
Yeah, so I think, you know, when we developed our ICP and we really, you know, then layered on the scoring, we also infused that historic data to say, here are the pockets of accounts that we really want to focus on, because we are looking to drive pipeline and revenue very quickly. When we did that whole analysis, we did it without looking at it from the lens of a territory coverage perspective. And I think that's important, because you have to look at it from where's the right place for your business to go to make sure that you're grabbing that pipeline to generate revenue the fastest. I think the flip side of that is, do you have enough food to cover to feed your AEs in the territories that they're in? So that becomes like another layer of the conversation, to look at the account distribution by AE to see if do you want to make adjustments to your territories and put 2 reps in a territory that might be very heavy on accounts that look like they're going to buy, or if there are accounts or territories that are very low in accounts, do you make some adjustments in that particular territory to maybe fold in, like, for an example, if you know, if all your ABM accounts were focused on 2 industries, if there's a territory that's very low, do you add in a 3rd industry? Do you, you know, do you start to look at lowering some of the thresholds so they do have enough to dig into? But if you start to do that, then you start diluting some of the things in that territory, and you don't necessarily have that push in terms of the accounts that you really want to land.
That's amazing. In your routing process, right? And no need to mention names and what tools you use, but in your routing process, how many steps are there before you can actually route a lead? Is it like, well, first I throw it through my Marketo program to normalize, and then Enrich, and Marketo prevents a duplicate on email, and then I do a lead to account link, and then like how many steps are in the way before you can actually hit a trigger to assign it?
To be honest, not a ton the way that we have it set up. So we have our routing running with our vendor on the Salesforce side, so in our CRM. So when something does come into the system in Marketo, we do have some operational campaigns that will pull the enrichment, that will do some of the normalization, and then it syncs over to Salesforce. And based on that data, runs through the assignment rules. So I guess there are some steps with those operational campaigns and the enrichment before it syncs over to Salesforce for the routing.
And do you enrich with multiple data providers or a single source?
In Marketo right now, we are using a single source, but we do have enrichment from a few different vendors. So that in real time, we're using one, but we have a couple of other vendors that we can do batch processing to do some enrichment. I think, it's an interesting conversation around data vendors because every vendor has a strength. And it's different. So it really depends on what business problem you're trying to solve for. So, we had, I think everybody probably experiences issues with account hierarchies. So certain data vendors are going to have better firmographic information and actually have account hierarchies that you can adopt. They may not have great contact matching rates. So then you need to find a vendor that's got good contact matching rates to support the data that's on those accounts. So I think, I don't think that you could wholeheartedly rely on just one data vendor and think that you are getting all of your needs met for the business. I think that you really have to look at the business problems that you're trying to solve. And vendors that are good at solving for those problems.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you. I couldn't have said it better myself. Back to account scoring. I know you're doing lead scoring, and it sounds to me like you're doing account scoring. But if you are doing account scoring, are you doing demographic plus intent plus person activity to drive a score on those top tier accounts to prioritize follow-up? Can you give us an idea of how you would end up allowing sales to see what accounts are the most priority to follow up with your targets here?
So we have a couple of scoring models that we're running with. So we've got our model that we built around our ICP, and then scoring our accounts around propensity, so against that ICP. And that really takes into account the vendor that we're using has, I think, something like 5,000 different data points. And they're firmographic, they're industry trends, their intent, install tech base, all those types of things. And I think, as you mature in your ABM strategy, that's the value in running with a vendor, is they do the analysis on all those disparate data points that you don't necessarily have access to. So that at an account level, that's how we're kind of ranking the account. So we have a letter value, and then we also have the numeric code, so we can understand that. That gives us an understanding of what are the accounts that we want to focus on and how do we prioritize. But then we also have our lead scoring model that is run out of Marketo on the people, on the person data. And that is a combination both of firmographic, demographic, and behavioral aspects. So what we want to do is have those two models to understand, okay, which one of the accounts should I start with? But then once I'm on that account, who should I be talking to? And that person scoring model goes through things like, job seniority, title, functional area, those types of things. So it gives us, I think, those two data points that really provide value on, which account, and then when I'm on the account, who should I be talking to.
So then if I'm a salesperson and I want to just be like, today I got my tasks, I have like 2 hours for this, 2 hours for this. And right now I just want to like make calls to people who are engaging in my target accounts. So I run a report of all my leads or contacts that have a high score at one of my target accounts, and then I just start at the top and start, and then that's a persona based, but also behavioral based. So you're calling decision makers that are engaged. That's cool. Some of the people I've talked to have built the engagement from the person model into as like a combination of the targeted account, so that you could just be like, hey, this is the #1 account. You got like 3 execs engaging that are right personas, and they are searching for this and that, and meet our demographic profile.
We were before we started working with this vendor to help define our our ACP and our ABM segment, we were actually looking at doing that. Is how do we lift the engagement that's happening on contacts and use that to score the accounts and inform what's going on the account level. The vendor we're using right now also has sort of a secondary data point, and they've sort of developed a little bit of a funnel on accounts so that you can understand if they're target aware or in consideration. The in consideration is pulling in some of that engagement that's happening on the account. And it also does, it is an indication. They've got some Java code that's on the website that consideration point also flags web activity. So we do have a little bit of that layer where we're folding that in at the account level. But it's interesting. I mean, there's so many different approaches and so many different models that you could build and you could use from a scoring perspective. That it's always an interesting conversation, and we often as a team debate what the best route is.
Yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense what you said. If this vendor is able to have some code on your site tracking visitors anyway, they actually utilize that as one of their data points in their score, which would indicate that it is a combination of both scores, and that makes a lot of sense. Okay, cool. Well, now just kind of for you, I guess I have one more question. So every Marketo I've ever logged into it's got this tab, it's called possible duplicates. And like most times Marketo doesn't have all their records in Salesforce, so like, your demand tools or whatever is not going to clean it up. How do you deal with the Marketo only duplicates? Do you like manually go into that report and merge them, or have somebody do that?
Yeah, we have a cadence. So on a monthly, we do a review of what's going on in the system. So duplicates can come from a lot of different places. So I think it's
Salesforce is number one.
Yeah, and we've got a lot of different systems that pipe information into Salesforce. So there's a lot of interesting duplicates and things that pop up. But I think it's to that point, it is critical that as a marketing operations function that you do have that lens of looking at your data hygiene on a regular cadence. So for us, we have some operational campaigns in Marketo that help to keep the database clean, but you really do need to spend some time looking at what's going on with the data so you understand if there's some issues that might be coming up or what have you, but also going in and making sure that that you clean up some of those duplicates. I'm a big advocate in the company to say that it's everybody's responsibility to keep the database clean, because I think a lot of people think, oh, that's an operations function, but it really is everybody's responsibility to help keep their data as clean as possible.
Yeah, Elliot Lowe, he's our Marketo champion or alumni. He said, we built a post together of 10 ways to reduce dirty data in Marketo. And one of his ways is to put a checkbox on a lead and a contact that indicates that that person has left the company. And
Yeah.
sales is responsible for filling that checkbox out, and he can then quarantine and remove or do research after. So, that is a critical component, is getting everybody involved. I call it distributed data quality.
Yes. I think we have a similar flag in our database as well, but I think I haven't done it at the company I'm at, but in past companies we've done a measure of data completeness and data accuracy in Salesforce, and we've used that to, I think, both reward and shame people. So if you've got people that own records that are, at best 10% complete, there's a problem there. So I think there are some things that you can do to make sure that you're helping entice the right behavior. But I do like that idea of, that distributed data quality ownership model.
All right. So you mentioned that you use data enrichment vendors.
Yes.
And it sounds like you use data like RevOps, data management, and lead distribution, and use tools or vendors to also manage all of these data processes. What do you think the average number of data tools that a Marketo admin should have in their stack?
Wow. Specific to data or
workflows? I mean, like, workflows that include, the combinations. Is it 6? Is it 10? Is it? It's not one.
No, it's most certainly not one. And I would say it really depends on where a company is in their maturity of use with Marketo. So I've been with my company for 7 years now, or coming up on 7 years. When I started, we were actually on a different platform. So, very small company, very small team. First project was migrating the platform into Marketo. And at that point in time, because we were a very small company, that was pretty much it. Salesforce, Marketo. I think of the first couple of pieces of technology we bought in the first year or two would have been, technology around our smart forms. We didn't really get into, from the experience at this company, data enrichment or data issues until a few years in, because we were so focused on just growing the database. So it was a very small database. It was just grow. Now that we've got a sizable database, it's how do you manage the data? And with that comes a whole host of different integrations and data partners. If I would have to guess, we've got more than 10. So I think if you're a mid-sized organization, if you've been using Marketo for quite a bit of time, you'll probably have at least 10.
Yeah, we're trying to emerge a category called data orchestration, and we're trying to make it seem as if it's as important as a tool like Marketo, right? Like, if there was one tool that could do all of this stuff, it should be like a pillar of your stack, right? You should have, and you have your MDM, but sales and marketers, they don't get to play with the MDM, and MDM is a world of its own. We want to have a management of all of our processes.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point. I mean, if you go back to the MarTech landscape diagram, just how many vendors there are out there, I think that we always look at and evaluate our tech stack to see, are there ways that we can consolidate some of what we're doing under a vendor that would do more. And I think that, the MarTech landscape is going to be interesting to watch in the next couple of years, because I do think there is going to be some consolidation.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun thing to be part of and to watch and learn. And Richard, we couldn't be more thrilled with your interview today. I think you've been an amazing guest on the show. And is there any tips and tricks that you want to leave to the audience of one or two things that if they don't have an order in their database tomorrow, they should start with?
Yeah. I think I think the critical thing is to make sure that you spend time with your data, so that you understand it, you understand how it's moving. It's organic. Data changes all the time, so you have to have that rigor, um, and that interest in making sure that you understand it. Because if you don't understand it, you'll never keep it clean. And then also making sure that you do have that diligence to make sure that you are cleaning data as you're finding the issues that are popping up.
Awesome. Well, maybe next time we have you on the show, you can teach other Marketo users how to build business cases around it, because it's not always easy
Yeah.
to get a CMO or a a check stroker to take their data seriously. So we really appreciate your time today.
Thanks. It's been a great conversation.
All right. Have a wonderful day.
You too.